Ay, yeah. Ay, ay, ay. Miracles come while we in the fight. Don't give up and hold him tight. You will have a visible battle scar, but never forget who you are and fight, fight, fight.
Hello, and welcome to Embracing the Fight. I am Erica Lamar, your digital creator and host. Embracing the Fight was created to help normalize the conversation surrounding physical and mental health issues and concerns. Let's face it, it's really difficult for people to be able to talk about issues that they had or things that they're going through in their lives for fear of being judged. So today is an extremely special episode. This person doesn't have any physical issues or really any mental issues, but they've been going through different cycles when it comes to love. And we're going to talk more about that. But before we do, take a moment to click like, click share, comment on the video, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I appreciate all of the listeners and everyone who's taking the time out to check out Embracing the Fight. Let's take a listen. All right, we're about to jump right in. I have a very special guest today, and this is episode 44, The Cycle of Love. As you can see, I have a very handsome friend on the screen. I'm going to let him introduce himself and kind of tell why, we've named this episode The Cycle of Love.
My name is D. Bake. I thought this was a great name for this, The Cycle of Love. One reason is because, I think throughout my time, my history, I've had ups and downs with love as far as a roller coaster, and I never gave up. So that's kind of what I want to explain tonight is more or less just, you stay with the fight.
It's interesting that you start off by calling it a roller coaster. So let's start off at the beginning of the ride. How exactly did we meet?
Well, I think we met, one thing it was like at the company that we were at, it's always a situation where you don't have a lot of Black leadership. And of course, when you have that small group, you typically, you gravitate towards each other, So it's just like walking by and, we give that little what's up sign so we know who we are. But we all came together, different backgrounds, different states that we grew up in. Some of us was engineers, some of us came from a different area. But at the end of the day, we all linked up, for that common, thing that we had together. So it was great. I enjoyed that time there.
Okay. And, since you've told everybody, that we're friends, then I always thought it was interesting because, I would ask you and our other friend, I won't mention his name because I didn't get his permission before we started the show. I would ask y'all about, who y'all were dating, who you're married to, all that kind of stuff, because, I had a tough time dating when I first moved there. But you told me a couple of stories, and one of them, I know I shouldn't laugh, but it was kind of funny to me when you told me about your first marriage. If you can kind of give everybody an idea, of what that was like for you.
Yeah, the first one was kind of funny. I had just, of course, my high school love. And when I enlisted in the military, I went to the U.S. Navy, and I came back home. Hey, you're welcome. And when I came back home, I remember, we had to do 1 week with our recruiter. And the recruiter brought me home. He said, "Hey, Dallas, we're going to this party tonight." And I said, "All right, well, let me just go home. Let me get dressed." So I get home, and actually it was at my girlfriend's mother house that I came back to. I get there, my grandmother was in the living room, my mom was in the living room, and this guy was also in the living room, but he was the landlord, so I didn't think anything about it, But what I did not know, he was actually a minister as well. So I go on in and take a shower, and I remember my mom came in and said, "Hey, you coming back in here to do this?" And I'm like, "Do what?" And she said, "Well, you finna get married." I said, "No, no, what you talking about?" And I said, "No, we ain't discussed it." And so then my grandmother come in and said, "Well, baby, you know how grandmamas can be. They give you that, well, baby, and when they give you that, well, baby, that means you need to do something. Well, baby,
Yeah.
this the right thing to do."
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, I went through with it. Wasn't 100% sure. 18 years old, wasn't
Ooh.
100% sure that's what I wanted to do. But I just thought, I was raised as a good man.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was the right thing to do. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, I went through with it.
Mm-hmm.
But after I got back to the military, got back to my base,
Mm-hmm.
I even called the young lady and I told her, I said, "This is not for me. I don't, I still want to be with you, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ready for this." And of course, we had it, annulled. So it was short, sweet. We stayed together for a little while,
Mm-hmm.
but again, there was a lot of growing up that I needed to do. So I was not prepared for, any of that situation.
Okay, so your first round with love, it was almost a knockout because you came in the door, you had no idea, what was going on, but you was trying to do the right thing. So you took that experience, and then a few years later, you met someone else,
Hmm.
fell in love, and you married them. So what was that like for you? How did you decide to transition from being a single man to looking for love again and actually getting married again? This time voluntarily getting married, not showing up and somebody saying you the one.
Well, it was a 6 year gap,
Mhm.
between that time, and of course, being in the military, I had been around the block a few times, so I think at that time I was ready to, they always say most men stop wanting to play the field around that 25 to 27. Well, that's about the age that I was at.
Mhm.
And by that time, I had, and this was a person that I actually went to high school with. I was transferred back to a base in Tennessee,
Mhm.
so we actually were reacquainted again, and it just took off. We became friends. I actually introduced her to somebody when we met. I was actually dating somebody at the time, and I introduced her to one of my friends,
Oh.
and right away she said, "Nah, this ain't gonna work for her with my friend." And I said, we tried to hang out as friends,
Mhm.
and of course, you know how that go. We were together a little too much. I
Uh-oh.
ended up breaking up with my girlfriend,
Mhm.
and the two of us started dating. And
Mhm.
so during that time, she came from a two-parent home, a
Mhm.
good Christian family, and she was telling me, "Hey, we're gonna have to cut everything off sexually, and we're gonna have
Uh-oh.
to do this the right way." So, of
Mhm.
course, with me, I'm thinking, "Hey, cut that off." Yep, I'm ready to get married. Ready to get married.
Yeah.
Nah, I really did love her and cared for her a lot.
Mhm.
And at the time, I had three daughters already, and
Mhm.
she was really good with my girls.
Mhm.
So I just thought that was a good thing for me to do. I was ready to settle down.
Mhm.
I actually was in love. I think the first time I cared a great deal for the first person.
Mhm.
But the second time, I actually was in love. That was that type of love that you say you don't want to live without that person or something. So I felt like
Mhm.
it was beyond puppy love. I really wanted to take it to the next level, and so we did. And we
Okay.
actually stayed. We dated 11. We was together a total of 11 years and was
Okay.
married 9 years.
Okay. So during that time, when you realized, that you loved her and y'all were together those 11 years, at what point do you just decide that, we can't do this anymore? We have to get a divorce? How does that work?
I think when people say that you have to be equally yoked, I used to scoff at that. I used to think that was the craziest thing.
Hmm.
But I do feel like that's a very true statement, and some instances, like with us, she came from a two-parent home. I did not, and
Hmm.
so there was a lot of things that a man was supposed to do that I really didn't have any idea because I was raised by a single mom.
Hmm.
So and it might seem silly now, when I look back at it, but it was something as silly as decorating the house on St. Patrick's Day.
Hmm.
And to me, I'm like, man, black families don't do that. We don't do all that. St.
We
Pat,
don't.
but she came from
Mhm.
she came from her mom was a teacher. and her
Mm-hmm.
dad was also an educator, so they were used to decorating the house as well as decorating the classroom. So she
Mm-hmm.
grew up with that. But to me, I would say, oh, that's stupid. Well, to her, using that term stupid, she took it as I was calling her stupid. So that was kind of like the
Gotcha.
difference in our terminology and kind of our upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing, my mom wanted to make sure that I was a man's man,
Mm-hmm.
and so not allowed to cry in our home.
Wow.
We couldn't do any of that. I had to go outside and fight. If it were five boys that came to my house and wanted to fight, my mama would make me fight them one at a
Oh,
time.
wow.
So we didn't have compassion.
Mm-hmm.
I was never really taught compassion, and I definitely say, just like now with my son,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I hug my son, I kiss my son, and I tell him, it's okay to cry, because I want to make sure he's able to have compassion, because that was one of the things that I was lacking. And
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the things that my wife needed that I was unable to give. So that's why I say sometimes that equally yoke comes in handy, because, you need to be able to see your father, maybe get angry with your mom, but at the same time make up and actually go back into a normal situation. Well, I didn't know how to do that, so that ultimately affected our relationship. And then, of course, again, I came from not so the best upbringing. I was raised in the project. She was raised in a more upper middle class,
Mm-hmm.
and her parents didn't think too highly of my upbringing. So of
Mm-hmm.
course, it was always looked at. No matter, even though I went to the military, went to college, got an engineering degree, they
Mm-hmm.
never really cared about that. To them, I was always going to be the
Oh,
boy from
wow.
the hood, the project,
Mm-hmm.
the project kid. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times they came in and they really dictated the end of the marriage. They could have actually helped save our marriage,
Mm-hmm.
but their dislike for me just allowed them to let, you know 11 years go to the wayside. And then, of course, I had a daughter coming up. That was my fourth daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And so they rather their grandchild not have the father present just because of their dislike for me. So some of the things, my immaturity
Mm-hmm.
and her parents getting involved really cost us that marriage right there.
Mm-hmm. So now you're on this roller coaster. First, you were volunteered, to get married. Then you spent 11 years with someone that you truly love, but the roller coaster hit a dip, and it involved the parents, you guys being unequally yoked, and your upbringing versus her upbringing, and how, they viewed you as a person. So, how did you cultivate that change in the next person you looked at pursuing a relationship with? Like, did you carry that in? And did you say, okay, I'm not going to try to date someone who's like upper middle class, or I'm not going to let anyone know, what my upbringing was like? I mean, what thought process did you have when deciding to move on to the next person?
Well, I will say definitely a couple of different things. One, right away with that situation, I didn't. I said to myself, I was never doing that again.
Mm-hmm.
Because I gave my all in that relationship, and to give your all into something like that, and then someone easily comes in and rip it apart. You take responsibility for your part, but then when you allow other people to rip that apart, it took me down through there. I did not. um it was almost to the point, I hate to say this, I'm embarrassed to say this, but it was to the point to where I purposely went after married women to
Mm-hmm.
break up their happy homes. They
Wow,
always say hurt people.
that's true.
And I just looked at it as, somebody came in and infiltrated my marriage, so I'm infiltrating everybody's marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had to sit back and pray myself out of that,
Mm-hmm.
because there were 3 or 4 year gap where um, I was just out there bad. I was
Mm-hmm.
out there bad. If you waved your hand, you might be the one. So, you know,
I think I
I had to
remember
really,
that.
I had to really, I had to really sit back and take a good look at myself. And then, I remember a time that I probably was dating or messing around with at least 2 to 3 married women, and then about 3 or 4 other just single women.
Mm-hmm.
And what made me want to change? My sister said she had several dreams that said that I was murdered by a man that said I was messing with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't even know at the time that I was messing with two married women in the same city.
Mm-hmm.
And she called this city. She had no idea about this city. She said
Oh,
what the city
wow.
was.
Mm-hmm.
And when she said that, it was like a wake up call for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I immediately called both women and said,
It was
"Hey,
like, that's
it's
it.
been great, but I don't think I want to get it in this." So I didn't go into details with them, but I just bagged myself out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I still found myself dibbling and dabbling, back and forth. So that's when I said, look, I sat down and I prayed and I said, God, look, I'm not finna, when they say you struggle with the flesh,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, God, I'm not finna let all of these women go. You're gonna have to take these women away from me and put
Mm-hmm.
somebody in my life that is meaningful. And I was going to church at the time. Now, not wasn't living right, Christ like, but
Yeah.
I was still trying to do the right thing. And so slowly each one of those young ladies that I was dealing with started falling off. I stopped
Mm-hmm.
taking the calls. They stopped taking my calls. And eventually I was back down to ground zero, had nobody.
Mm-hmm. And
And
it's interesting though. Before you go forward, you mentioned being in church and still not living right. You do realize that church is like a hospital, right? You go
mhm,
there because you're sick. It's a triage. It's there to help you. Perfect people don't go to church. Just like Christians aren't perfect, but you strive to get
to be,
closer
yeah,
to be closer to Christ. And you should never, look down on yourself for that because that could have been God's way of pulling you closer. Because he sent that message straight through your sister and you was in church and he's like, wait a minute, Lord, if you take these women away, that's it. And you saw them dropping off, you was in church, you might not have been living right, but I guarantee you straight back up. Because I remember
yeah,
you was coming to church where I was at. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
know you're getting fed now.
yeah,
So
yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, you were getting a good message. But
And that was one of the things that at the church that my ex-wife and I was going to.
Mhm,
I always got fed at that church. I
mhm.
knew once we got divorced, I knew it was time. I went there for 1 year after our divorce, but I knew it was time for me to leave because I couldn't even hear the message at the. Normally, I could
Oh
remember
wow.
every message, but I
Mhm,
couldn't remember anything that he said. Even if I had wrote notes, the
mhm.
notes looked like Charlie Brown, wonk, wonk, wonk. I couldn't understand nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's when I end up moving churches and we
Mhm,
end up being at the same church. And and then during that time period, like I said, I asked for everyone to be removed, and
mhm,
God did that. He took them all out. And I was by myself for a while. I needed that time to, and that's one of the other things that I tell people to do. When you come out of those divorces,
mhm.
don't jump right back into something. Give yourself time to heal,
Yeah.
and there's no number of days, weeks, or months or years on that
Mhm.
healing.
Okay.
But you will know when you're ready to get back out there. So
Mhm,
again, there was a pretty significant time in between that. I end up meeting a young lady that everything that I said I did not want.
mhm,
That's what it was. That's what I was given. I said I didn't want a woman with kids.
mhm.
Got a woman with 3 kids.
Yeah.
I said I didn't want a woman that had a son because man, baby daddies, they ain't no joke. They
Mhm.
ain't no
Think
joke.
about
And
them boys.
if anybody know about Memphis, man, when them baby daddies roll up in them box Chevys, beating it with the with the trunk beating down, boom, boom, it ain't no telling what you finna deal with. So, so, and that was just kind of one of those things that when I met her, we did not, it was no physical involved, because I was here in Alabama, she was in Tennessee,
Mhm,
and we talked on the phone for months
mhm,
before we finally met. And then just so happened the week that we was going to meet, or the weekend we was going to meet, her daughter went in the hospital,
mhm,
and she actually fainted and fell out, and she went in the hospital as well. So we didn't even get a chance to talk for like 3 or 4 days, but then we started right back, and that was our connection. Our connection became really strong over the phone.
mhm,
And when we finally met, it was just like we were best friends. We had talked for like 3 or 4 months before
mhm,
we finally met, and so there was an immediate connection.
Mhm.
I still think that it was a little rushed because at the time, I really wanted to. When you've been married, you kind of tend to want that. You start loving it. As my sister tell me, I'm the marrying type. So,
Mhm.
you tend to want that again.
Mhm.
And, I say now that, uh, we kind of rushed it a little bit. But, I was definitely in love with the person. I struggle with saying, was I in love or was I infatuated with the person? But either way, I know I wanted to be with that person.
Mhm.
And of course, probably after 2.5 years of dating, we went ahead and got married. That's the wedding you attended.
Mhm.
And so it was a great thing. I felt on top of the world. I needed that.
Mhm.
Even times I could see myself. I was struggling in my job.
Mhm.
So when I got that marriage back or got my friendship back with someone, I mean, man, my job came up. I got promoted a couple of times. I even had the courage to leave the company that we were at and go
Mhm.
seek, employment elsewhere, and got promoted, moved up, made more money. I just felt like I was on top of the world because I had a partner. I had that helpmate that was something that I really needed, in my corner. So I felt great at that time.
Mhm.
And of course, we were together 9 years, and I stayed in
Mhm.
that marriage 7 years.
Oh
So
wow. Okay.
the
You
third,
you
what
got a
they
little
call it on
longevity.
7. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, had a 9 year. Well, let me see. Had a 2 week, a 9 year, and a 7 year. So
That 2 week, I shouldn't be laughing. That 2 week tickled me so bad. We told like what?
yeah.
But okay, so after this 9/7 years, something happened to cause you guys to separate. Was it
hmm
anything similar to the previous reason, or is it something else that's been added to your repertoire of learning when it comes to this
No, it
type
was
of love?
definitely something else because I will be the first to say, if I could have been the husband in the second marriage like I was in the third,
Mm-hmm.
it would have never been a third. So I grew up a lot. Um, I definitely took counseling. I remember saying when we first on the second marriage, I remember saying, "Man, black people don't need counseling. We ain't doing all that." So I didn't have a respect for the counseling. Well, on the third marriage, I went through everything. I did the counseling. We did the workbooks. We did the follow up. We did everything exactly right. I was trying to definitely be that husband that I know I should have been the second go around.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I did everything right, but what caused us to um, go downhill? Infidelity and infidelity on her part. You know,
Mm-hmm.
which it's crazy. People always say, well, when men do it, is not. We expect everybody to forgive us, but
Mm-hmm.
when women do it, it like take our world down through there. And
Mm-hmm.
I know all the women that listen to this about to kill me about this, but I always say that men are more physical, and women are more emotional.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is like I knew when she got involved with another man, which it was a coworker, when
Mm-hmm.
she got involved with that person. It wasn't just like what a man would do. A man would go out and probably mess with somebody tonight, come back home, and it's no big deal. He just met him tonight. But when it comes to most women, it's changing now. The world is changing. But
Mm-hmm.
back then, it was kind of like her and that person had got a chance to know each other on a deeper level and had a connection. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually it became confusing to her. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like I was the side dude and he was the husband
Oh.
because she spent more time with him,
Mm-hmm.
than she did with me. So, I think, of course, I didn't find out about the infidelity till maybe about 6 months after, we decided to split.
Mm-hmm.
But, at the time, she just came and said, "Hey, I'm not in love with you anymore." And I said, "Well, do we need to do counseling? I mean, what's the problem? We ain't had no issues. We don't argue. I mean, what is the issue?"
Mm-hmm.
And she would just say, I'm not into this marriage anymore. But like I said, it was infidelity all along, but I just didn't know that.
Okay.
So by the time I found out about the infidelity, it was really devastating to me because, just like with anybody else, you thinking maybe she's just having a bad period. People
Hmm.
go through that, and maybe she'll come back around. But it was we would never. It was never going to be the same. So of course I allowed it to just. We went our separate ways. We decided to continue to co-parent, and believe it or not, we've been pretty good friends. We're better friends now than we were when we was in a relationship.
Okay. And that really makes me curious to ask now. You are back on this roller coaster again. You're actually dating someone else.
Mhm.
So what makes you want to date someone after, these first three to say that I'm still, willing to look for, I'm still willing to go through this cycle of love?
I, you know, I think the biggest thing for me, I have full custody of my son. My 18-year-old, he's graduating, going to the Navy now,
Mhm.
and I have my 8-year-old. So I know that I'm gonna always be the disciplinarian, but I know my son still needs that nurturing type love, that motherly love, to really be a full functioning, young man. And
Mhm.
so I know for me, I never really gave up on love 100%. I always
Mhm.
knew it was something that I wanted
Mhm.
in my life. Um, but I still could not see myself as being a person that would get married a fourth time, But the young lady that I met, she's very special,
Mhm.
and of course, she's been hurt as well.
Mhm.
And the only thing that had me concerned, in the beginning, was she's never been married at all.
Mhm.
She was in a long 14-year relationship, but she's never been married. So for me, I didn't know how she was going to react to me not wanting to be married.
Mhm.
And of course, in the beginning, I told her, hey, I'm not 100% sure I want to get married again, but you never know. And I just figured it was going to be just like any other relationship. We'll go through the cycle,
Mhm.
and maybe she'll fall off, maybe I'll fall off. But in this situation, it wasn't even like that. I mean,
Mhm.
it was like this. She's become my best friend.
Mhm.
And again, I think I went out of town with her to her family house, and I let my son go hang with her son, who's 14,
Mhm.
and I was so concerned because of the age gap. But
Mhm.
she was calling her son a lot. Hey, how is he doing? Is he okay? Is he hungry? He need anything? She was so concerned about that, and at this time we had only been dating about a month.
Mhm.
So, well, I take that back. We had been dating about 3 or 4 months, but it was about a month after we introduced the kids,
Mhm.
because we kept the kids kind of separate out of that situation until we knew we were going to be serious. So, but when she was doing that, that let me know that she had that motherly love, that nurturing that I know my son needed,
Mhm.
and she was being, that helpmate, that I needed, but we did not address that or put that out there. So
Mhm.
it was just it was refreshing to finally meet somebody that was like that. So here, I'll say, here within the last 5 months, I've been talking about marriage again, and that's something that I thought I would never, ever, 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 ever do.
Mhm.
But when you meet that right person, you start feeling it again, and I do think, with the pain that she's endured, the pain that I've endured, that'll be the thing that will actually help us actually keep that bond together, because we both know how it feel to be hurt, betrayed,
Yeah.
and you put your all into somebody, and then it goes to the wayside. So she understand that. So that's, I guess, that's our glue right now. We keep each other together, because of that right there.
Okay. And hopefully, this is the end of your roller coaster ride. So, if you could give someone who's listening to this some advice, whether they're thinking about, getting married or getting divorced or just taking on this whole cycle of love, what would you tell them to do? Like, would you tell them jump in feet first, head first? What would you tell them to do when they're embarking on their cycle of love?
I would definitely say, if you want to start beginning the beginning cycle, take on that counseling. Make sure that you understand each other because, believe it or not, counseling can peel back the layers of things that you would think it's not something that would be a showstopper. But believe it or not, it could be some things the way the people leave the clothes laying around. Those things
Mhm.
can be showstoppers. So
Yeah.
you got to be able to peel back the layers, and I think counseling in the beginning would do that. And
Mhm.
I definitely think you definitely need that counseling up front. As far as being in the marriage, you got to be able to communicate and love on your partner, even when they're unlovable. You still got to
Mhm.
love on them anyway.
Okay.
And you got to put God first. That's the most important thing. Put God first. And I think those things will get you through that marriage.
Mhm.
Don't give up so easy because marriage is not always that. The pretty rose petals and the chocolate candy is not always
Mhm.
that. There are some times where it do get ugly. There's some times where you do run through financial struggles, and but you got to remember when she's down, you pull her up. When he's down, you pull him up. You got
Mhm.
to remember those things. So within that cycle, I think you have to do that. Now, as far as divorce, I definitely say, try your best to avoid divorce if you
Mhm.
can. But at the same time, I don't recommend somebody to stay in an abusive relationship, infidelity type relationship. And the
Mhm.
same thing, it's just like if somebody is just blowing all the money and destroying
Mhm.
everything that you're trying to build,
Mhm.
that's not going to work either. But, if it's not any of those things, definitely try to avoid divorce and even get counseling
Mhm.
before you just go out and draw up the divorce papers, because it could be something simple that can get y'all back on, the right path. So definitely counseling again on the backside. And as far as going back into love after you've been there, take
Mhm.
the time and heal. Take the time and heal because, again, as we said, hurt people hurt people. All you're going to do is just go right back and bring that baggage from your previous marriage into your current situation.
Mhm.
And that's going to end up being another divorce. So, that's one of the things that um, my girlfriend and I, our fiance and I, we've actually discussed just about everything.
Mhm.
We put it out on the table. I tell her I'm an open book. I lay out everything. Anything that was an issue in my past, I lay it out there. I tell her, I try to be honest with her and make sure she understand me,
Mhm.
because there are going to be some times that I like to come in a room and just sit by myself and watch TV. I don't need everybody around,
Mhm.
but I want her to understand there's not a problem with me. I just like to be off to myself like that every so often. So
Mhm.
you got to tell them that, because if they see you doing that, they think there's a problem. Then they get worried, they get insecure, and
Mhm.
then it develops a real problem. So you got to lay things out up front when you go in and take all those mistakes that you ran into before and learn from them. Learn from them. So every issue is just an opportunity, for improvement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are some great nuggets, and I thank you so much for coming on the show and being so transparent and so open. This is going to be an amazing episode, and I really, really appreciate seeing you again and hearing that you got a fiance. So I'm going to call you as soon as we get off of this show. So
All right.
thank you so much for joining Embracing the Fight. Thank you again for another amazing episode of Embracing the Fight. I truly hope you enjoyed D-Bake's message, and I'm going to start calling him Dr. D-Bake for all that knowledge and all that good stuff he dropped. And I wish him the very best in the future with his continued cycle of love. Hopefully, he's at the end of the roller coaster. He's getting off the ride, and this is it for him and his beautiful fiance. But as always, make sure that you take a moment to share this message, because every time someone shares their testimony, it's a chance for another person to start their healing process. Again, I am Erica Lamar, your digital creator and host for Embracing the Fight. Thank you again and have an absolutely amazing day.